Welcome, dear listener, and welcome back to Sleepy Historian, a quiet corner of the internet where the ancient world drifts softly into the present, and where the past unfolds at a pace slow enough for your body to relax and your mind to grow calm, maybe even sleepy. Tonight's story is part of our ongoing gentle series, Boring History for Sleep. Soft-spoken historical storytelling designed for winding down, drifting off, and resting deeply. So if you're someone who enjoys falling asleep to boring history, calm bedtime storytelling, relaxing history to fall asleep to, or a soft-spoken history documentary, then you're in the right place. This episode is for fans of Roman history, archaeology, slow narration, and peaceful documentary-style storytelling. Something steady, measured, and quietly fascinating. A history sleep story meant not to excite curiosity, but to gently cradle it. Tonight, we'll be exploring a topic that occupied the thoughts of ancient Rome in subtle, everyday ways. How Romans tried to protect their dreams from evil spirits. It is a topic with superstition, quiet ritual, household gods, tiny symbols, worn pathways of belief, and gentle mystery woven through each layer. Before we begin, if this kind of soft storytelling helps you rest, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it truly brings you peace. And if you'd like, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. It's strangely comforting to know who else is out there across the world, falling asleep to the same old stories, the same quiet history, the same gentle rhythm. So if you haven't already, dim the lights. Allow your breathing to slow just a little. Let your shoulders soften and settle. The day has already asked enough of you. Now the night can unfold. Let the household gods draw near. Let superstition become something distant, harmless, and softly intriguing. And let the ancient world arrive. Not suddenly, but slowly, like a quiet footstep through a dark Roman corridor. Together, we'll drift backward in time, into a world of clay oil lamps, whispered charms, symbolic gestures, and dream protection rituals. A world where people believe that while the body slept, the spirit wandered and sometimes needed guidance, or perhaps even protection. So, gently, let's begin. Imagine yourself stepping quietly into an ordinary Roman household, sometime in the late 1st or 2nd century CE. The evening is calm, drifting slowly across the tiled rooftops of the city, whether it is Rome itself or another town of the vast and carefully connected empire. The last light of day softens into gentle shadows. The streets outside have begun to settle. Somewhere far off, a vendor calls out one final offer before closing his stall. The sound grows faint, then disappears entirely. Inside the home, life slows. The rhythm of the day has already moved from activity to rest. Meals are finished. The final water has been carried. Floors have been swept with quiet, habitual gestures. Now the household prepares for night. Candles and lamps glow softly, their flames steady but never bright. The scent of olive oil hangs lightly in the air, comforting in its familiarity. In many Roman homes, sleep did not come instantly. It arrived gradually, the way a tide meets the shore, steadily, silently, without rush. People would talk gently, share small thoughts, or sit together in silence. This was a time when dreams were seen as meaningful, sometimes informative, sometimes unsettling, sometimes simply strange. Romans believed that the boundaries between sleep and the invisible world were thin. The night held mysteries, and so they treated it with quiet respect. The bedroom, or cubiculum, was often small compared to other spaces. Most were simple, with plastered walls and minimal decoration. A bed, a wooden frame with a woven support, sat neatly along a wall. Linen or wool blankets were folded and smoothed. A single pillow rested at the head. For wealthier Romans, the room may have included painted frescoes, soft fabrics imported from distant places, or carved furniture. Yet even in luxury, the tone remained gentle and modest, designed for rest rather than display. Nearby, a small niche could hold figurines, the household gods known as the Laras and Penates. Their presence was comforting, a reminder that the home was watched over, guarded not by force, but by tradition and belief. People might pause before them, not hurriedly, not dramatically, but with the quiet familiarity of routine. A whispered prayer, perhaps. A hope that the night would be peaceful. A thought that dreams would be kind. A parent might glance toward a child's sleeping area, ensuring warmth, ensuring safety. Someone older might sit for a moment longer beside a fading lamp, thinking of the past, the day's concerns already dissolving. Across the empire, in stone houses, wooden homes, villas, apartments, countless people were doing the same, preparing for sleep, allowing stillness to deepen. There is a softness to this imagined moment. No rush, no urgency. The Roman night creates space, a slow pause before dreams begin. You can almost hear the quiet breathing of the household, the subtle movements of fabric, the gentle flutter of flame. The outside world fades into distance, and inside there is only calm. As you picture this scene, notice the textures, cool stone beneath bare feet, the faint warmth of a lamp flame nearby, the smooth grain of carved wood. Notice the stillness, a quiet unlike daytime, where voices hush and movement slows. Notice the feeling, a sense that the day has ended with completeness. The Romans lived in a world full of unknowns. Nature, fortune, and fate played constant roles. Yet in these small moments, the ordinary rituals of preparing for rest provided comfort. To them, sleep was not just a physical act, it was a passage, a slow drift into a realm where the mind wandered and visited places unseen. And so, in this quiet room, with the door gently closed, the evening finally settles. The lamp burns low, the body grows still, and sleep begins its slow approach. Nothing urgent remains. Nothing demands attention. There is only the softness of the night and the gentle belief that dreams could be guided, protected, and shaped, not by force, but by tradition and stillness. The ancient world becomes distant and close at the same time, familiar in its humanity, yet far away in its customs. But here, in this moment, the distance doesn't matter. Only the quiet matters. Only the peaceful rhythm of rest and breath remains. And so, as the Romans once did, we continue gently forward, deeper into the calm of night, and deeper into their quiet practices of sleep. As a Roman household settles into darkness, the final preparations for sleep move into quiet ritual. These actions are simple, almost unnoticeable, yet they repeat night after night in a rhythm that becomes comforting. In Rome, repetition meant protection. Familiar gestures became small anchors in a world that often felt uncertain. A lamp wick is adjusted just slightly so that the flame burns lower. It flickers, then steadies, offering a gentle glow rather than a bright light. The shadows shift softly along the wall, never sharp, always feather-edged and slow. The air grows cooler. The day no longer lingers. Some Romans believed that sleep was not merely rest, but a journey. The mind, they thought, wandered somewhere outside the body while it dreamed. And if the mind could wander, so too could other things find their way in: spirits, omens, unseen forces. Most people did not fear this intensely. Instead, they treated it the way someone today might treat a superstition about knocking on wood or avoiding walking under a ladder. An old habit, a quiet tradition, not alarming, but accepted. Beside the bed, a few people placed protective objects. These varied widely depending on region, belief, wealth, and family custom. A small car charm might rest near a pillow. Sometimes it was shaped like a hand, sometimes an eye, sometimes an animal thought to protect the sleeper. These items were not displayed or admired. They were simply used, steady companions in the transition into night. For others, protection took the form of sound. A softly spoken phrase, repeated 3 times, was believed to form a boundary between the waking world and the sleeping one. Words, to the Roman mind, had power, not emotional power, but practical power like tools. One might whisper something simple, such as, "Dormio tranquillus, somnium bonum, mala umbri non intrant," I sleep in peace. May the dream be good. Let no harmful shadows enter. These whispered words were not urgent or fearful. Instead, they were steady, like the tone of someone locking a door before nightfall, not expecting danger, but acknowledging possibility. Children, especially, often received extra care before sleep. A parent or caretaker might trace a small circle over the child's forehead or gently touch an amulet resting near their neck. In Roman culture, affection was rarely dramatic, yet these small moments revealed tenderness. Night clothing was simple, soft linen tunics or wool garments in colder months. Fabrics worn close to the skin grew familiar with use, becoming more comfortable over time. The feeling of cloth, the scent of clean fiber, all contributed to the calming routine. Outside, the world continued at a slower rhythm. If one listened carefully, faint sounds traveled through the still night air. The call of a distant dog, footsteps from someone returning late, the soft turning of a cart wheel guided carefully through stone streets. The noises were gentle reminders that life carried on beyond the walls, yet nothing asked for attention. In wealthier homes, night might include fragrances. A small dish of crushed herbs, lavender, bay, myrtle, or rose, could rest near the bed. The air would hold a faint aroma, soft, earthy, floral, comforting. Romans believed certain scents calmed the mind and softened dreams. Nothing overpowering, only a trace, barely there, enough to guide restfulness. Time itself felt slower in these spaces. Without clocks, sleep began not at a number, but at a feeling. When the lamps were low, when the house grew still, when conversations faded into silence. It is easy to imagine someone reclining on the carefully arranged bedding, taking one final slow breath, feeling the weight of the day dissipate. The flame continues its gentle glow. A final thought drifts through the mind, a hope for a peaceful night, and then dissolves, replaced by quiet emptiness. The Roman night was not silent in an absolute sense. Rather, it was softly filled with natural rhythm. Slow breaths, faint rustles of cloth, the subtle shifting of someone finding a more comfortable position. In that stillness, the transition into sleep began not with abruptness, but with gradual surrender. Dreams, whether peaceful or strange, would soon arrive. And for the Romans, those dreams mattered. They were not random. They could be messages. They could be warnings. They could be glimpses of something beyond ordinary life. But before exploring dreams themselves, the moment of falling asleep, this gentle drift, is where everything began. The final lamp, just before going out, cast its warm glow one last time. Shadows embrace the room. The world becomes soft. The body relaxes. The boundary between waking and dreaming gently fades, and sleep finally takes its place. As sleep takes hold in the Roman home, the night deepens quiet and steady. The household lies in gentle stillness, and the world outside grows softer still. The moon, if visible, casts a pale silver light over the rooftops, smooth and cool. For many Romans, the sky itself was a kind of silent presence, predictable, ancient, and deeply tied to belief. Stars were not distant scientific objects, but symbols, patterns, and sometimes omens. Inside the cubiculum, breathing has settled into its natural rhythm. Some sleep lightly, drifting in the earliest stage of rest. Others have already entered deeper sleep, where time loses meaning. The lamp flame finally burns low, shrinking into a small, trembling point before going out entirely, leaving the room in gentle darkness. Yet even in darkness, the Romans imagined that unseen forces might still move quietly. The night was not feared, but respected. Roman culture existed at an intersection between practicality and superstition. Even those who lived educated, philosophical lives, those influenced by Stoicism, Greek rationalism, or the writings of thinkers such as Cicero or Seneca, often still carried small habits inherited from countless generations. For instance, some sleepers believed that lying on one's right side encouraged peaceful dreams. Others felt that sleeping facing a door allowed protective forces to watch over them. These ideas varied across households, passed down not through formal teaching, but through memory, tradition, and the soft repetition of everyday life. There is something almost comforting in recognizing that these beliefs were not rigid rules. They were quiet customs, habits shaped by uncertainty. The Romans understood life as unpredictable. Weather changed without warning. Illness arrived suddenly. Fortune shifted easily. In a world without modern technology, small rituals offered a sense of stability. The bedding beneath the sleeper was simple but familiar. The mattress, stuffed with straw or wool, held the faint scent of natural fibers. Over time, the material compacted, forming familiar shapes and subtle hollows. When someone lay down each night, their body fit into its own small indentation, something subtly unique, something known. Outside, the night continued its gentle rhythm. In larger cities like Rome, Ostia, or Carthage, faint sounds echoed from distant activity. Night guards walking their rounds, the quiet murmur of late travelers, or the soft creaking of the wooden hulls of ships resting along harbors. In a countryside, night brought different sounds. Crickets, the distant bleat of an animal, the soft breeze moving through olive groves, vineyards, and tall wild grass. Time passed slowly, without hurry. In this still darkness, dreams began to unfold. To the Romans, a dream was not merely a sequence of thoughts. Dreams were considered messages, sometimes from gods, sometimes from spirits, sometimes perhaps from one's own deeper mind. There was no single interpretation. Instead, meaning grew from context, timing, and personal experience. Some dreams left the sleeper peaceful. Others left them quietly unsettled. But regardless of the nature of a dream, the moment of awakening, if it happened briefly in the night, was often met with stillness rather than movement. People did not immediately rise. They lay quietly, allowing the last strands of dream to drift away or settle. If the dream felt important, it might be remembered and quietly repeated in thought, preserving it until morning. And then, gently, sleep returned. Hours flowed unnoticed. Eventually, the slow transition toward waking began. It did not happen suddenly. There was no alarm, no abrupt noise demanding attention. Instead, the mind stirred gradually. Awareness expanded. The body remained still. The world became a soft balance of slumber and wakefulness. Gradually, faint morning light reached the walls, subtle and cool. Shadows shifted again, reversing the motion of the previous night. The sleepers began to notice the world, not fully, but enough to feel present. For most Romans, rising was neither rushed nor delayed. It was simply the next step in the rhythm of life. A quiet breath, a slow stretch, a sense of returning. Before speaking, many people simply sat for a moment, not to think, not to analyze, but to allow the transition from dreams to waking reality to complete itself. Some reflected briefly. Was the night peaceful? Were dreams calm or troubled? Did sleep feel restorative? And if a dream lingered, a symbolic image, a strange encounter, a figure from memory or myth, then the events of the previous night might guide the first thoughts of the morning. Whatever rested in memory was not dismissed. Dreams were part of the night's work, worth noticing, worth holding, at least briefly. In this quiet transition, the day began as softly as it had ended. And now, with the Roman household returning gently to consciousness, we begin to shift our focus too, to move from the broad experience of Roman nights to the meaning they placed upon the dreams that came during them. Now that we have settled into the calm rhythm of daily Roman nightlife, we gently shift our focus. Rather than observing a household as a whole, we narrow our attention to a single figure, someone whose writings shaped how Romans understood dreams. Gaius Julius Hyginus, a scholar, librarian, and quiet thinker who lived during the early years of the Roman Empire. Hyginus was not a warrior, not a statesman, not a dramatic figure whose life appears in bold letters across the violent chapters of history. Instead, he lived mostly in the background, quietly preserving knowledge, writing, organizing, and thinking. It is likely that he spoke softly and worked patiently, surrounded by scrolls rather than soldiers. He served as the superintendent of the Palatine Library, a scholarly institution believed to have been founded by Emperor Augustus. The library stood near the heart of Rome, close to the imperial palace, close to the symbolic center of power. Yet inside its walls, the atmosphere would have been calm, measured, controlled. Light filtered in through high windows. Shelves and niches held rows of scrolls carefully arranged and labeled. Imagine Hyginus walking slowly along the aisles. His sandals make only the faintest sound against the polished floor. His robes brush gently as he moves. His breath is steady, his movements unhurried. He lived in a world filled with language, Greek, Latin, mythological concepts, histories, and stories reaching far beyond Rome itself. Among his many subjects of interest, Hyginus collected knowledge about dreams, especially those believed to be meaningful, prophetic dreams. These were not considered ordinary illusions of the sleeping mind. Instead, they were seen as messages, sometimes from gods, sometimes from divine intermediaries, sometimes from deeper forces beyond human understanding. In his work, Hyginus attempted something subtle yet important. He tried to organize dreams into categories, not to impose certainty, but to create understanding. In a world without clarity, order itself could be soothing. He may have sat at a simple writing table, a flat wooden surface, accompanied by a stool or low-backed chair. A scroll rested before him. A reed pen dipped in ink moved across the pale surface with quiet strokes. Writing was not fast. It required attention. Every mark mattered. Outside, Rome continued its ordinary rhythm. Merchants bargaining, children playing, officials debating, workers building. But inside the library, time felt slower, as though knowledge created a space separate from noise and urgency. Hyginus drew from earlier Greek ideas, especially those of Artemidorus and earlier philosophers who believed that dreams could offer guidance. The idea was not mystical in a dramatic sense. Rather, it was reflective, gentle, almost philosophical. A dream could be like a soft whisper from something unseen, informing without commanding. In describing dreams, Hyginus did not try to convince or persuade. He simply recorded, observed, and preserved. His role was not to declare what must be believed, but to offer a structure for how things could be understood. That subtle difference reveals much about his character: calm, measured, thoughtful. For instance, he categorized dreams into types. Some were oracular, believed to foretell future events. Some were diagnostic, offering insight into health or emotional state. Others were symbolic, requiring interpretation, as if dreams spoke in metaphor. And a few were empty dreams, simple reflections of daily life, not meant to be interpreted at all. This careful distinction suggests that even in antiquity, humans wondered, why do we dream? Do dreams matter? Are they random or meaningful? Hyginus did not answer these questions with final certainty, but he helped Romans think about them gently, patiently, thoughtfully. His writings likely circulated quietly, reaching educated readers, scholars, priests, healers, or simply curious minds. Ordinary people, too, may have heard his ideas secondhand, through conversation, superstition, or routine household practice. Those centuries have passed, the subtle wisdom remains. Even in an age of uncertainty, humans sought understanding, not through fear, but through reflection. Hyginus himself lived through the era of Augustus, a time of transformation. Rome grew from a republic into an empire. Power consolidated, wealth increased, and yet, despite the monumental political shifts occurring across the world, Hyginus continued his quiet work, cataloging small truths of human experience. His presence reminds us that history is not only shaped by emperors and soldiers. It is also shaped by thinkers, especially those who worked quietly, preserving knowledge through fragile materials that needed care, patience, and reverence. And in the peaceful hours of the Roman night, when dreams drifted between the visible and invisible world, Hyginus's ideas provided a soft framework, not demanding belief, but offering companionship to the ancient sleeper. Even now, we can almost picture him pausing his writing, gazing thoughtfully at the words before him, and considering the mysteries of dreams with gentle curiosity, not urgency, not fear, just patient, quiet wonder. As we remain with Hyginus a little longer, we shift from his quiet work in the library to the way his ideas reflected a broader moment in Roman history, specifically the growing attempt to organize, classify, and understand the unseen world. The early Roman Empire was not only a period of expansion and political strength, but also a time when intellectual curiosity grew alongside superstition. This balance created a unique cultural landscape, rational thought and mystical belief existing side by side, without contradiction. Hyginus lived in an environment where knowledge was being gathered from across the empire. Egypt, Greece, Persia, Gaul, and many other regions contributed philosophies, medical theories, and symbolic traditions. The library shelves were filled with scrolls written in multiple languages, each containing fragments of different worldviews. Hyginus did not treat these perspectives as rivals. Instead, he viewed them as pieces of a larger puzzle. One of his quiet contributions was helping Romans see dreams not as chaotic mysteries, but as patterns, something worth observing with patience. He studied stories of generals who dreamed victories before battle, merchants who dreamed of storms before sea voyages, and ordinary people who dreamed symbols that echoed future events. These accounts were not dramatic in tone, but steady and collected, handled with the calm interest of someone recording natural history. There is a gentleness in imagining Hyginus working through such material, not chasing conclusions, but simply shaping a soft structure around human experience. His method suggested that dreams were neither fully divine nor fully random. Instead, they existed somewhere in between, like mist between two landscapes. In the early morning hours, as sunlight entered the Palatine Library, Hyginus may have observed scrolls with care, rolling and unrolling them slowly to avoid damage. The ink on the papyrus would have a faint scent, earthy and dry. His hands would move steadily, careful not to tear fragile edges. Reading in that time required patience. Nothing was immediate. Thoughts developed slowly, shaped by repeated study. His work was not widely celebrated. He did not seek fame, yet he influenced several later Roman writers, including those who shaped dream interpretation manuals used for centuries. Even long after his death, his ideas continued whispering into Roman bedrooms, not loudly, but softly, through tradition and repetition. Hyginus's life also reflects an important truth about Rome. Even though it is remembered for power, conquest, and monumental architecture, it was equally shaped by scribes, archivists, and quiet scholars whose names are often less known. Without them, stories, ideas, and beliefs would fade. It is believed that Hyginus faced difficulties late in life, financial strain, perhaps illness, or political shifts. Yet even in those final years, his connection to written knowledge remained steady. Some ancient sources suggest he died quietly, without chaos or spectacle, leaving behind a body of work that would persist gently through time. His passing likely went unnoticed by most of Rome. The city did not pause. Markets continued. Soldiers marched. Officials held meetings. But in the soft silence of libraries and in the unwritten memory of households practicing nightly rituals, Hyginus's influence remained subtle, quiet, persistent. Even today, when historians examine ancient dream interpretation, his name appears, not in bold type, but calmly, as though still speaking in the same soft tone in which he once wrote. In reflecting on his legacy, one notices that Hyginus embodies a particular kind of presence in history, someone who shaped understanding not through commanding authority, but through careful attention. Someone who did not seek to define the unseen world aggressively, but instead gently helped others navigate it. His life reminds us that curiosity can be peaceful. Study can be calm. Knowledge can grow slowly, like a plant rooted in quiet soil rather than uprooted by urgency. And as we leave Hyginus in his library, ink drying on papyrus, thoughts forming quietly in the air, we carry with us the idea that even the most mysterious parts of life can be approached gently. Dreams need not be feared. They can simply be explored, observed, and remembered. Soon, we will move from scholars like Hyginus to the rituals, objects, and beliefs that ordinary Romans used to protect themselves from unwanted dreams or spirits. But before we shift, it's worth lingering here for one last moment. In the tranquility of a Roman library, where silence was not emptiness, but space for reflection. A place where knowledge rested, waiting patiently for anyone curious enough to seek it. As we remain within this calm chapter of Roman intellectual history, we gently shift our attention from Hyginus, the individual, to one specific event connected to his influence: the growing Roman practice of consulting dreams for guidance, particularly among the ruling class. This was not a dramatic movement, but a gradual cultural shift, subtle and slow, like the dim transition from night into dawn. One especially quiet and meaningful example can be found in the early years of Emperor Augustus. Augustus, the first emperor of Rome, lived in a world shaped by both political calculation and quiet superstition. Though known for careful reforms, measured governance, and deliberate self-control, he also believed that dreams could reveal truths unavailable in waking thought. He is recorded as having taken them seriously, not as unquestionable divine messages, but as gentle signals worthy of reflection. According to later accounts, Augustus once dreamed of a towering figure asking him why he hesitated in ruling. This dream, calm rather than frightening, was interpreted by court scholars, possibly influenced by the kind of classification Hyginus preserved. They considered the symbolism: authority, hesitation, destiny. For Augustus, the dream did not command action, but confirmed inward certainty. It reinforced a path he was already walking. In this moment, we see something subtle but significant. Dreams did not control Rome, yet they accompanied decision-making. They functioned like a quiet conversation with one's own thoughts, private, symbolic, and contemplative. Many Roman leaders kept written dream records. These journals were not dramatic documents filled with prophecy. Instead, they resembled slow reflections, simple accounts, written sometimes upon waking before dawn when memory was freshest. A typical entry might have been brief. I dreamed of water, calm, not storming. A quiet shore. I woke peaceful. Or, I saw a doorway. I did not cross. I felt uncertain. These simple lines carried meaning and context. Water could symbolize emotion or travel. A doorway might represent transition. Interpretation was not rigid. It depended on timing, personal condition, and subtle intuition. It wasn't only rulers who turned to scholars like Hyginus for understanding. Priests of certain temples, especially temples dedicated to Asclepius, the healer, performed what was known as incubatio, or ritual sleeping. People would sleep within the temple grounds, believing that healing dreams would come more clearly in such sacred spaces. Priests would gently interpret these dreams upon waking, often using frameworks influenced by earlier thinkers, including those whose works Hyginus preserved. Imagine one of these temples at night. Stone columns casting long shadows, oil lamps burning steadily along walkways, the scent of incense soft in the cool air. Individuals seeking answers would lay upon simple bedding, not luxurious, but comfortable enough. Silence would fill the space, broken only by faint footsteps of priests and the soft sounds of sleeping petitioners. In the morning, the dreamer might wake slowly to pale sunlight. Priests, calm and deliberate, would record the dream, never hurried, never pressing. Through their training, they approached interpretation as a balance of observation and intuition, not strict law. They worked gently, understanding that dreams often spoke indirectly. This practice resonated with Roman ideas about fate, fatum, an invisible thread woven through each life. Dreams, some believed, did not change fate, but revealed glimpses of its path. Like a lantern carried through a long hallway, a dream illuminated only a small distance ahead, creating clarity without urgency. It is within these rituals, writings, and habits that Hyginus's influence quietly spread, not through proclamation, but through gradual integration. His classifications helped Romans describe their inner experiences. His preservation of older Greek material allowed ideas to survive that otherwise may have faded. And his thoughtful presence in the Palatine Library created continuity between cultures, beliefs, and generations. By the time the first century of the empire drew to a gentle close, dream interpretation had become an established part of Roman thought. Not dominant, not dramatic, but steady and accepted. Something ordinary, something woven into daily life. As we prepare to leave this segment, we notice how calmly this knowledge spread. Not through force, but through curiosity. It drifted softly from scholar to priest, from temple to household, from scroll to spoken tradition. Centuries later, even when many names of that era faded into silence, the ideas themselves remained, whispering gently through time. Now, with a calm understanding of Roman knights and the scholars who shaped their interpretations, we move gently into the realm of archaeology and material culture. The physical traces left behind by those who once slept beneath ancient roofs, hoping for peaceful dreams. What historians know about Roman dream protection does not come from dramatic inscriptions or large monuments. Instead, it comes from quiet objects, small amulets, carved tokens, delicate jewelry, faded inscriptions, and household items discovered carefully buried beneath centuries of earth and dust. These artifacts do not speak loudly. They whisper, they hint, they suggest patterns, habits, and beliefs carried from one generation to the next. One of the most common symbols found in Roman domestic archaeology is the fascinum, a protective charm shaped like a stylized phallus. Though unusual to modern eyes, in ancient Rome, this symbol represented good fortune, vitality, and protection from the evil eye, a malevolent force believed capable of disturbing sleep, health, and peace of mind. Archaeologists have found these charms carved from bronze, bone, glass, and terracotta. Some were worn as pendants. Others were hung above doorways, tucked beneath pillows, or placed discreetly near beds. None of these objects feel dramatic. Instead, they feel practical, small, worn smooth by handling, not treasured for beauty, but valued for familiarity. One can imagine a child clutching such an amulet as a nightly comfort, or an adult placing one beside a sleeping area with the same reflexive motion one might use today when switching off a light. Another object frequently discovered in Roman sites is the bulla, a small, sealed locket worn traditionally by children. Some of these bullae contained herbs or powders. Others held folded pieces of papyrus inscribed with brief, protective phrases. These phrases were rarely elaborate. They were direct, almost quiet. Absomnia abside, sleeplessness depart, or somnus bonus veni, good sleep come. Such inscriptions serve as archaeological reminders that sleep, even in ancient times, was not always effortless. Some nights required encouragement. Some minds remained restless. These artifacts show that protection was not only about preventing supernatural interference. It was also about creating psychological comfort. Archaeologists have also uncovered small figures of gods associated with dreams and protection. One common figure was Somnus, the Roman personification of sleep, often depicted with wings, sometimes attached to his head, sometimes to his back. The wings symbolized the drifting nature of dreams. Light, fleeting, delicate. These figures were not large. They could sit comfortably in a hand or rest quietly upon a shelf near the bed. In excavated villas, markings have been discovered on walls near sleeping areas. Not elaborate frescoes, but faint symbols. Circles, crescent shapes, simple repeated lines. Their purpose is uncertain. Some believe they were casual doodles. Others interpret them as protective signs, drawn casually but intentionally. Archaeology rarely gives absolute answers. Instead, it offers pieces of a quiet puzzle. Soft clues pointing toward habits long forgotten in writing but preserved in earth. Excavations at Pompeii and Herculaneum, cities preserved uniquely by volcanic ash, provide especially vivid examples. Some bedrooms contain small altars with traces of burn herbs, possibly linked to nighttime ritual. Scents such as lavender, bay leaf, and myrtle were found in residue analysis, plants historically associated with calming effect and dream protection. In the ruins of one modest home, archaeologists discovered a clay lamp inscribed with the image of an owl. The owl symbolized wisdom and night-watching vigilance. A lamp like this, softly glowing beside a bed, would have carried symbolic reassurance, a quiet guardian presence in the darkness. Other artifacts reveal gentle layers of meaning. Rings inscribed with short protective phrases, figurines of household guardian spirits, miniature hands making symbolic gestures, all subtle reminders that the Romans approached the unknown with familiarity rather than fear. Through these discoveries, the ancient world begins to feel less distant. Their nighttime rituals resemble modern habits in quiet ways. Just as someone today may sleep with a familiar object nearby, or speak a private hope before bed, the Romans comforted themselves with small tokens and gentle repetitions. Archaeology bridges time not through spectacle, but through shared human experience, the desire for rest, peace, and safety during the vulnerable hours of sleep. As we move deeper into this segment, we will continue exploring these objects and beliefs, not as relics of superstition, but as gentle companions to lives lived long before ours. Reminders that even across centuries, humans sought softness in the night. As we continue exploring the physical traces of Roman beliefs about dreams and the unseen forces that might influence them, it can be calming to imagine the process archaeologists follow when uncovering these delicate remnants of the past. Much like the rhythm of breathing or the slow drift of thought before sleep, archaeology unfolds gradually, layer by layer, brushstroke by brushstroke, with quiet patience. Archaeologists often begin with what is visible: walls, flooring, fragments of pottery, shattered household items. But the most meaningful discoveries in understanding Roman dream protection tend to be small, tucked into corners or buried in places that were meaningful rather than visible. In some Roman homes, especially those belonging to families who valued ritual practices, archaeologists have discovered lararia, or household shrines. These are placed in kitchens, courtyards, or sometimes in hallways leading to private rooms. While lararia were not exclusively tied to sleep, they played an important role in maintaining harmony within the household, harmony that extended into the night's rest. Some shrines contained carved figures of Laras and Penates, protective household spirits. Others held miniature offerings, dried figs, pine cones, seashells, or wine residue absorbed into ancient clay vessels. In rare cases, a small inscription was found nearby requesting calm dreams or protection from unseen influences. Though such inscriptions are fragmentary, their tone is usually gentle rather than desperate, as though the request was part of a quiet routine rather than a dramatic plea. Another fascinating set of archaeological clues comes from inscribed tablets known as depictions or curse tablets. These tablets were usually made of thin sheets of lead and sometimes rolled tightly like scrolls. Although many were intended to bind or silence rivals, some appear to reference the protection of dreams or the prevention of nightmares. They were often placed underground, in wells, graves, or areas thought to be connected to the supernatural world. The text on these tablets varies. Some contain long invocations invoking gods or spirits. Others are short and concise, almost meditative. Let my sleep be untouched. Guard the night. No dream may cross this threshold. Despite their dramatic category name, Curse Tablet, many of these inscriptions read more like affirmations. Their motivation seems to reflect an attempt to create boundaries, a sense of safe perimeter between the sleeper and whatever forces might be wandering the night. Archaeologists also study residues left inside herbal containers discovered near Roman sleeping areas. Some of the most common botanical traces include myrtle, associated with purification; lavender, linked to calming the mind; chamomile, used for relaxation; frankincense and myrrh, thought to elevate prayers to protective spirits. These plants, when burned or steeped, created fragrant smoke or soothing scents, much like incense or herbal teas used today. While we do not know exactly how frequently Romans used these herbs, the consistency of archaeological evidence suggests they were not a rarity. In some tombs, archaeologists have discovered objects associated with sleep placed alongside the deceased. Pillows filled with plant fibers, small clay lamps, amulets, and miniature images of Somnus or his Greek counterpart Hypnos. These funerary inclusions imply that sleep and death were deeply intertwined in Roman thought, not as identical states, but as parallel experiences, both requiring peace, protection, and gentle passage. Roman coins sometimes depict somnus or dream-related symbols, reinforcing the cultural importance of restful sleep. One rare coin type shows Somnus reclining quietly, wings folded, in a posture resembling someone resting on a soft bed. Though such imagery was never widespread, its existence reflects how deeply the Romans conceptualized sleep as a meaningful, almost sacred, part of life. As archaeological discoveries accumulate, a quiet pattern emerges. The Romans saw dreams not merely as random images or subconscious reflections, but as meaningful experiences influenced by gods, spirits, and unseen forces. Their rituals and protections reveal neither fear nor obsession, but a calm acknowledgement of mystery, an acceptance that the world of sleep required respect, preparation, and gentle boundaries. Tonight, as you listen, you may notice that the rhythm of these discoveries has a soothing quality. Step by step, artifact by artifact, meaning slowly rising from silence. Just as ancient Romans prepared themselves for restful sleep, we too may find a quiet sense of connection across time. We will now move gently into the final part of this segment, exploring how Roman magic, superstition, and early science began to merge, forming beliefs that shaped later cultures and still, in subtle ways, echo into the modern world. As we arrive at the final portion of this segment, imagine taking one slow breath in and a gentle breath out, letting the story continue at its own quiet pace. We have explored the objects and archaeological clues the Romans left behind, but now we turn to the subtle relationships between belief, superstition, and the earliest forms of organized knowledge. In the Roman world, magic, or what they called magia, existed alongside religion and emerging proto-science in a layered relationship rather than a conflict. There was no sharp line separating rational healing from mystical protection or prayer from preventive ritual. Instead, practices blended, forming a cultural tapestry of experimentation, tradition, and symbolic comfort. For sleep and dreams, this blending was particularly clear. Roman physicians, following the writings of Greek predecessors like Hippocrates and later Galen, attempted to understand sleep scientifically. They believed it was connected to the balance of bodily humors: warm, cold, dry, and wet. Too much heat or too little moisture, they argued, could disturb the calm internal state required for deep rest. But these medical explanations did not replace rituals or symbols. Instead, they existed alongside them. A person might consult a physician about sleeplessness and also place a protective charm near their bed. They might burn herbal mixtures recommended by medical texts while also whispering an invocation to a household spirit. The practice was neither contradictory nor confusing. It was simply layered, practical and mystical, observable and symbolic, blended into one holistic approach to nighttime peace. Archaeological evidence supports this layered worldview. In some household storage spaces, medical tools were discovered beside small inscribed stones or tiny figurines. On the surface, these pairings may seem unusual, but in context they reflect the Roman mindset. The physical and metaphysical coexisted. There are also subtle indications that dream interpretation was sometimes considered a legitimate field of knowledge, not strictly magical, but part of a thoughtful inquiry into meaning. Some Roman households kept small scrolls or fragmentary instructional pieces based on Greek dream manuals. These manuals offered calm, structured interpretations of dream symbols. Water indicated emotional change. Animals represented challenges or opportunities. Doors symbolized transition between states of life. The tone of these interpretations was often measured rather than sensational, reflecting a belief that dreams might contain wisdom if approached with patience and moderation. One archaeological discovery from the early imperial period contains a fragment of a dream ritual. The writing is faded, but enough remains to understand the intention. Before sleep, wash the hands. Let the mind be still. Speak softly. Let the night be gentle. Place laurel beneath the pillow. Trust what comes. This short ritual reads almost like a bedtime meditation, neither dramatic nor fearful, but soothing, deliberate, and calm. Some scholars believe rituals like this may have served more psychological than supernatural functions. The act of performing a repeated sequence, washing the hands, lighting a small lamp, arranging an object, could gently signal to the mind and body that it was time to rest. In this way, ritual became rhythm, and rhythm became rest. As Rome evolved through centuries of cultural exchange, some practices shifted, especially with the rise of Christianity. Early Christian communities sometimes adopted Roman sleep rituals without fully retaining their original meanings. Angels took the symbolic roles once held by spirits. Prayer replaced incantation. Protective inscriptions transformed into crosses or miniature psalms. Yet the underlying desire, peaceful, uninterrupted sleep, remained unchanged. Modern archaeological museums display many of these objects in cases with soft interior lighting. Visitors pass by slowly, often silent, as though the artifacts carry a quiet atmosphere of their own. A small figurine, a worn ring, or a faded inscription can invite imagination. Someone once touched it, perhaps every night, perhaps without even thinking about it. It may have been part of their last waking gesture, the final moment before drifting into darkness and dream. Artifacts connected to sleep feel uniquely personal. They do not commemorate triumph or public life. They belong instead to private hours, the unseen portions of a day when even emperors were simply humans resting. In that way, they serve as reminders of shared experience that crosses centuries. Even now, as you listen, there's a soft echo of their rituals in your stillness, a recognition, perhaps, that sleep has always required both vulnerability and trust. With this, we gently conclude the archaeological and cultural exploration of Roman dream protection. In the next and final segment, we will shift toward contrast, examining how elite Romans approached these beliefs differently from everyday people, and how expectations, luxury, discomfort, and status shaped the nightly experience. For now, let the thought rest. Across time, humans have always sought peaceful sleep. Now, as we enter the final segment of this quiet exploration, the focus shifts from the collective experience of Rome to the gentle contrast between different layers of Roman society. Sleep, dreams, and nighttime rituals may seem universal, yet the way individuals prepared for rest varied, depending on their status, circumstances, and surroundings. Still, beneath those differences, a shared humanity remained. The same human need to feel safe before surrendering to the stillness of night. Imagine first the Roman elite. Those belonging to wealthy senatorial or equestrian families often lived in villas or townhouses, expansive homes with rooms arranged around grand atriums and peaceful courtyards. Their sleeping spaces, known as cubicula, were sometimes decorated with frescoes and furnished with crafted beds made from carved wood or bronze supports. Soft cushions filled with feathers, wool, or plant fibers provided comfort. Lamps made from bronze or delicate glass might glow faintly beside the bed. The atmosphere, at least in physical appearance, could feel serene and refined. Elite Romans often employed servants responsible for preparing their sleeping spaces. Bedding could be shaken out to remove dust. A small warm cloth might be offered for the hands or face. Sometimes herbs, oils, or fragrances were used, not only for pleasure, but because certain scents were believed to encourage restful sleep or protect against unsettling spirits. Lavender, rose, and myrtle were common choices. A wealthy household might even employ someone knowledgeable in dream interpretation or protective ritual, though this knowledge was often intertwined with household religion rather than formal magic. Still, even among the elite, sleep was not always effortless. Some writings suggest that the pressures of politics, wealth, and public life weighed heavily on the minds of those in high positions. A wealthy merchant or senator might fear misfortune, betrayal, or the shifting loyalties of the powerful. In those restless hours, symbols of protection, a small figurine on a bedside shelf, a ring engraved with a calming inscription, or a household charm placed beneath a pillow, served as quiet reassurance. Meanwhile, the experience of sleep for ordinary Romans was often simpler, sometimes less comfortable, yet no less meaningful. Many families of modest means slept in small rooms shared with other members of the household. Bedding might consist of woven mats, blankets made from wool, or straw-filled mattresses. The scent of the night might carry the smell of nearby cooking hearths, neighbors speaking quietly, or animals settling down. Light was limited. Oil was expensive, and many slept in near total darkness once the lamp flame was extinguished. Yet even in modest homes, small rituals existed. A simple pendant might hang beside a doorway. A single protective symbol may be scratched discreetly into a wall near where a family slept. Ordinary households sometimes stored simple herbal bundles or placed household spirits, Laras and Penates, in small niches nearby. For many, the rituals held comfort not because they were elaborate, but because they were familiar. Those with the least resources, laborers, enslaved individuals, and those living in densely populated insulae, apartment buildings, sometimes slept in spaces without privacy. Their bedding might be thin, and nighttime noise from streets or neighbors could be constant. Yet written accounts hint that even here, quiet belief persisted. A piece of string tied in a symbolic knot, a small carved object hidden beneath bedding, or a whispered phrase before closing one's eyes might serve as a personal shield against the mysteries of dreams. Across every layer of Roman society, from the powerful to the powerless, dreams held meaning. Dreams could offer reassurance, warnings, or glimpses into the unknown. Even people separated by wealth or circumstance shared the same instinct, to create a boundary between waking life and the vulnerable state of sleep. Priests, philosophers, and even emperors sometimes consulted dream interpreters when a dream lingered too strongly. Meanwhile, ordinary people shared interpretations among friends, neighbors, or family. Dreams became stories, sometimes personal, sometimes communal, weaving through the culture like gentle threads of curiosity. And while elite Romans might commission expensive amulets or travel to temples associated with sleep and divine healing, many others practiced their rituals quietly at home. Both approaches reveal the same truth. Sleep was not merely rest. It was a space where the boundaries between body, mind, and unseen forces blurred. A space requiring preparation, protection, and trust. As you reflect on these differences and similarities, you may notice a peaceful pattern emerging. No matter one's role or status, the search for restful sleep has always been part of the human story. Even now, as evening deepens and thoughts soften, we continue this ancient practice, preparing ourselves, consciously or not, to welcome the night gently. As we continue gently through this final segment, let us shift our view outward, from private bedrooms and household rituals to the public spaces and beliefs that shaped Roman attitudes towards sleep and dreams. While daily habits varied, depending on wealth and lifestyle, certain practices and cultural influences created subtle continuity across the empire. One area where this becomes especially visible is in the temples and healing sanctuaries scattered across Roman territories. Some of these sanctuaries were dedicated to gods believed to influence dreams or to provide healing through sleep. These spaces were often inspired by older Greek traditions, especially the temples of Asclepius, where supplicants would undergo incubation, a ritual in which individuals slept within a sacred precinct in hopes of receiving a healing dream or divine message. Roman versions of these sanctuaries followed similar practices. Individuals seeking clarity, peace, or relief from recurring nightmares might first purify themselves with washing, prayer, or a small offering. Afterward, they would sleep within the temple grounds, sometimes in a designated sleeping chamber, sometimes beneath the open sky. It was believed that certain locations held unique spiritual resonance, enhancing the connection between dreams and divine influence. Elite Romans sometimes traveled significant distances to visit these dream sanctuaries. For them, the journey represented both privilege and purpose, an opportunity to connect with powers beyond the limits of reason or medicine. Meanwhile, ordinary Romans sometimes visited local shrines or participated in community rituals believed to invite peaceful sleep or meaningful dreams. Some inscriptions found in or near these sanctuaries describe serene experiences, dreams of gentle figures offering reassurance, or visions of symbolic objects whose meanings later became clear. Others reference long-awaited relief, sleep finally free from agitation, fear, or uncertainty. The tone of these historical traces remains quiet and reflective rather than dramatic, mirroring the emotional landscape surrounding rest. Not all Romans viewed dreams as mystical or spiritual. Some philosophers considered dreams to be simple reflections of the body or mind, shaped by diet, thoughts, or daily concerns. Followers of Epicurus believed dreams held no divine meaning, seeing them instead as byproducts of natural processes. Stoic thinkers sometimes treated dreams as potential ethical reflections, internal messages revealing the state of one's character. Yet even these philosophical interpretations did not eliminate ritual. A philosopher might still carry a charm. A thinker who rejected superstition might still sleep beneath symbols inherited from family tradition. These layers reveal a subtle truth. Belief was not rigid. It was fluid, shaped by personal experience, comfort, and quiet instinct. One archaeological discovery that reflects this intersection of belief and skepticism is a small tablet inscribed with a short instruction: "Do not fear the shadows of sleep." Scholars believe this tablet may have belonged to someone educated, perhaps influenced by Stoic thought. Yet, despite its rational tone, the object itself served as a protective symbol, suggesting that reassurance was valued even when logic resisted the idea of supernatural influence. Across the empire, regional differences also shaped nightly rituals. In provinces with strong pre-Roman traditions, such as Egypt, Gaul, or the Near East, local customs blended with Roman ones. Egyptian influence introduced associations with dream gods, such as Serapis, while regions farther north incorporated protective knots, runic symbols, or seasonal rituals meant to calm the sleeping space. In some areas, Roman soldiers stationed at remote forts adapted these beliefs in their own ways. Excavations near Hadrian's Wall, for instance, have uncovered small amulets, scribbled prayers, and figurines believed to protect against nightmares or wandering spirits of the night. Life on the frontier could be unpredictable, and rituals provided a quiet form of grounding amid distance and uncertainty. All these variations, elite and humble, philosophical and mystical, local and imperial, reveal a complex but gentle tapestry of attitudes towards sleep. The Romans did not treat dreams as mere illusions, nor did they rely entirely on ritual or divine intervention. Instead, they navigated the uncertain terrain between body, mind, and mystery with a calm curiosity. Tonight, as you imagine these ancient spaces, sanctuaries filled with drifting lamplight, small charms held quietly in the palm, shared beds in ordinary homes, You may sense that the distance between past and present is far smaller than it seems. The desire for rest, reassurance, and peaceful dreams remains one of the most enduring threads in human experience. Soon, we will softly continue into the final part of this segment. We will bring together these contrasts and reflect on lasting legacies of Roman nighttime belief. For now, allow your thoughts to settle, as though drifting gently like embers fading in the dark. Now, as we move gently into the final portion of this segment, we shift from the public spaces and shared rituals of Roman culture to a more reflective understanding of what these contrasting practices reveal. Through archaeology, written accounts, and inherited traditions, we see how sleep occupied a unique place in Roman daily life, a space where vulnerability and routine met quiet symbolism and belief. Among the Roman elite, sleep could sometimes feel like an extension of status. A wealthy household might invest in finer bedding, decorative wall paintings with mythological themes, or even imported textiles. The material world surrounding sleep conveyed privilege, yet comfort did not guarantee peace. For those navigating politics, business, or shifting alliances, the mind could remain restless. Letters from well-known Roman figures occasionally mention sleepless nights or anxious dreams, suggesting that even the most refined surroundings could not fully silence the pressures of daily responsibility. In contrast, the experience of lower-status Romans often lacked comfort, but contained a practical form of acceptance. Sleep was necessary and sometimes communal. Families might gather in shared spaces, not only because of limited resources, but because closeness itself provided reassurance. The presence of others, breathing softly nearby, may have served as its own form of protection. Yet both elite and ordinary Romans shared one universal understanding. Sleep was more than rest. It was a moment in which the boundary between the physical world and the unseen felt thinner. One of the most subtle but meaningful contrasts in Roman society emerges when we consider access to interpretation. Elite Romans sometimes sought out scholars or priests to analyze their dreams. They might travel to temples or write down particularly striking visions. Meanwhile, working families often relied on shared storytelling, recounting dreams at meals or during daily tasks. Dreams became part of everyday conversation, shaped by community rather than authority. Despite these differences, the symbolism of protection appeared across all classes. Protective charms, quietly repeated phrases, herbal preparations, and boundary-setting rituals existed in both small apartments and expansive villas. Even those who rejected superstition often kept an object or symbol nearby, perhaps inherited, perhaps habitual, perhaps comforting without requiring explanation. This shared ritual space reveals something interesting. The Romans viewed nighttime not as passive silence, but as part of life that deserved structure. The day belonged to labor, business, and movement. The night required preparation, reflection, and gentle transition. As Roman culture changed over centuries, especially with the spread of new religious beliefs, some nighttime practices evolved. Christian households began replacing older symbols with crosses. Instead of invoking Roman gods, people recited prayers for protection. Yet in many ways, these new practices echoed the old. The form shifted, but the meaning remained. Before sleep, one creates a boundary and offers a quiet request for peace. By late antiquity, even though the empire itself was changing, the continuity of nighttime ritual persisted. We find writings describing parents blessing their children before bed, individuals placing symbols beneath pillows, and families whispering short phrases meant to invite calm dreams and keep away night fears. These gestures, small and often unnoticed, carried forward an ancient instinct, the desire to shield the sleeping mind. When we reflect on all these layers, elite luxury, ordinary routine, public ritual, private practice, a gentle conclusion emerges. Despite the many divisions in Roman society, sleep existed as a shared experience unaffected by wealth or status. Every person, whether powerful or humble, eventually closed their eyes and entered the uncertain territory of dreams. And so, the artifacts and traditions surrounding Roman dream protection become more than historical curiosities. They become reminders of something universal. No matter the time or culture, people have sought comfort in the quiet hours of the night. They have lit lamps, placed tokens, whispered familiar words, or breathed deeply into stillness, hoping that rest would come softly and that dreams would be kind. As you listen now, perhaps the rhythm of history feels slow and soothing, like footsteps fading down a quiet corridor, leading toward a softly lit room. The Romans, with all their rituals, beliefs, and uncertainties, remind us that sleep is not only physical rest, but emotional and symbolic refuge. With this final reflection on contrast and continuity, we complete the fourth segment. Soon, we will gently transition to the closing of this journey, a quiet conclusion inviting rest, reflection, and ease. For now, allow the echoes of ancient rituals to feel distant yet familiar, like a soft lullaby carried across centuries. And now, we gently arrive at the end of tonight's quiet journey. You followed the slow thread of history through Roman streets, quiet bedrooms, temples, workshops, and shared nighttime rituals. Together, we stepped into a world where dreams were not random or forgotten, where the quiet hours held meaning, mystery, and small gestures of protection. And now, all of those ancient voices, beliefs, and habits begin to soften, fading into the stillness of the present moment. The Romans lived lives full of duty, noise, politics, work, movement, conversation, and so many expectations. Yet even they understood the importance of creating space to rest. Their nighttime rituals, whether simple or elaborate, were reminders that sleep is a boundary and also a return to calmness, to balance, to safety, to the quiet parts of ourselves that don't need to perform or achieve, only to exist. So here, at the end of this story, the world grows quiet again. Your breathing can slow, your body can soften. There is nothing left you need to do. Like an ancient oil lamp gently burning low in a darkened room, your thoughts may flicker, then settle, then grow quiet, one by one. You're safe to rest. Whatever happened today, it is already in the past. Whatever tomorrow brings, it does not need to arrive now. This moment belongs to calm, silence, and gentle stillness. And just as the Romans placed charms, whispered soft words, or trusted the presence of household guardians, you too can allow comfort here. Not from superstition, but from the simple knowing that rest is allowed and calmness is welcome. So, if sleep begins to arrive, you don't need to hold on to the narration. You can let the edges blur, let the sentences slow, let meaning drift into softness. And if you're still awake, that's all right too. Sometimes the body falls asleep first. Sometimes the mind follows. Either way, you are resting. The night is long enough. There is no rush. Nothing is required. Thank you for spending this time here, sinking slowly into quiet curiosity, gentle history, and restful storytelling. If this helped you soften into sleep or made your evening a little calmer, feel free to return anytime. For now, sleep deeply, dream softly, and rest well. Good night.